Yo, welcome to another edition of the Men Who Cry podcast. Thank you guys again for listening. I'm your host, Just Richards. Make sure you like, subscribe, review, tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend. If you don't be able to do those things, I have to assume that you are out here kicking dogs when they are down. On today's episode, we will be talking heavy football, aka that pigskin. And I wanted to start off the show today speaking specifically about what the hell is going on with this Matthew Stafford situation. So as it sits right now, Matthew Stafford is looking, from the reports, to get a big payday. If you look at some of the top quarterbacks in the NFL, they're all making anywhere between 50 and above money in terms of their contracts, right? Matthew Stafford, while he is on the older side, is somewhat of has an underpay, but he's clearly looking to get more money. And it's been a very odd way about this, because the Rams have come out and publicly said that they're trading Cooper Kupp, right? Which I don't necessarily have that much of a problem with, in the sense, if you think about, okay, the last two seasons he's basically been in and out the lineup. He might be not damaged goods, but maybe the contract isn't worth what he's providing you on the field. And I feel like when you have Sean McVay, you have Puka Nacua already, you can afford to lose a Cooper Kupp and be able to maybe spend that money in other places on your team, whether that's defense, you can draft another wide receiver. I don't necessarily think having Cooper Kupp on the team is something that you need to do. But the thing I don't get is why Stafford apparently wants out, outside the fact that it seems like he wants to get paid more money. Now, Matthew Stafford has kind of done this before with the Lions, basically saying, I want out. And they granted his request, and that's how he ended up with the Rams. And the rest is history. He won a Super Bowl, and they made the playoffs, I believe, every year since that point. The thing with this that gets so interesting and spicy is the fact that it looks like Stafford's going to have a real market, because if you read anything from NFL insiders or draft analysis guys or anything like that, it doesn't really seem like everyone's too high on this draft class, right? Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders, it looks more and more like it's going to be Cam Ward will be one of the first quarterbacks taken in the top 5. However, I always have this big thing is, if the team at the very top of the draft who needs a quarterback and doesn't draft a quarterback, that's a very big red flag for me in terms of how the rest of the league evaluates the quarterback, right? Like, this isn't a couple years ago when you had the Eagles and you had the Rams, both teams trade up to 1 and 2 to draft Jared Goff and Carson Wentz. And both of those quarterbacks, Jared Goff's shown to be a better player than Carson Wentz, and even though Carson Wentz had pretty big highs, they weren't considered to be top flight quarterbacks. And while Goff's had a pretty solid career, I don't think anyone considers him to be some type of game changing player. And so I think this is kind of the leverage that Matthew Stafford's agent sees and says, it's like, I'm here to make my move, and this is kind of the best chance for me to get that bag. What makes this weird is that apparently Tom Brady and him are having secret meetings at a ski resort that was unplanned. Now, look, rich people run into rich people all the time, so I'm not going to say out loud or confirm the fact that those guys completely knew that they were going to be able to link up together. But I'm saying you shouldn't be surprised running into these people and these conversations happen. But we've already gone so far past the line of like what's acceptable in media. The fact that the number one color commentator is a part owner of a franchise and is recruiting a player from a team, allegedly, to his team, seems to break almost every ethical bounds that we have in journalism. Like, he can't cover the team the way that he's supposed to be. Like, he has to be an objective observer, and he's not. And being a color commentator is not just the X's and O's on the field, right? pretty much any high-level NFL player can probably break down what's happening on the field, right? It isn't that complicated of a game. But what the color commentator is supposed to do, or supposed to kind of bring to the game, is a level of thought, enlightenment. How is this team doing this? Why were they able to turn this stuff around? Who are the people a part of this? And that's not always going to be good commentating. Like, you're going to have to be critical. So how is it that Brady is going to be critical of a team that he is a part of building that credibility for? It makes no sense. So having Stafford in this place, I think it all appears to me that he will be traded. To where? I don't know. Clearly, it's going to be to a bad team. It looks like the Raiders and the Giants are the two landing spots, and it makes sense more for the Giants than for the Raiders. The Raiders, I think, kind of just want to make a splash, and they want to kind of, have people put their name out there some more. And to be fair, I don't think the Raiders team is that bad. They need some tweaks around the edges, but they have a really good tight end. Pete Carroll, we'll see how he is as a coach. But to me, the thing that Pete has always done has been able to bring energy into a room. Even though Pete's in his 70s, he still was able to bring energy into the room. So I don't think that they will be embarrassing as they have been in years past. I think they actually will be a respectable team. And while their division is really, really hard, I think every single year that, like, the NFL is the land of opportunity, right? You go from 4 wins to 10 wins real easily just by the bounce of the pigskin, right? The Giants have no absolutely idea why they do this, outside the fact that, unfortunately, their owner has placed their front office and head coach in an impossible position. They have a small amount of talent and a very small window to win, so you have to make bad transactions. And if they are able to get Stafford, it's kind of like, all right, you have Stafford. You're in one of the tougher divisions in the league. You have 2 top 100 players on your team in Malik Neighbors and Dexter Lawrence. You're not close to really doing anything substantial, whether it's even within the division, let alone the playoffs. So I think this Stafford deal is honestly the thing that I think will move the draft, because if Stafford goes to one of those two teams, then that Shador and Cam aren't going to be drafted by the Raiders or the Giants. And let me take that back. We just saw last year a team basically sign Kirk Cousins and then draft the quarterback in the first round. So this could still happen, right? Cam or Shador can end up on the same team with Stafford next season. So let me correct myself there. But this is just what bad teams do all the time. They think that getting a quarterback will be the thing that's going to be able to fix their problems. And yet time and time again, we have seen that it's not just a quarterback. It's the rest of your team, the rest of your roster overall, and how that actually is going to shake out for you in the long term. But just having him on the team is something that's going to be, I don't know if that's really going to do too much for you. The second part of this is exactly like where the Rams are going, because the Rams, I thought, and as it showed out on tape, they were the team that was the most competitive with the Eagles. I really thought they had a chance to win that game coming down the stretch. But the Eagles defense was clearly one of the best, if not the best defense in the league last year. And your team's close. Even if you get rid of Kupp, I don't think anyone thinks that you're going to trade him for nothing. You're going to get someone will give you something for Cooper Kupp next season. And you have your picks, and you had a good young defense. You just had the defensive player of the year as a rookie on your team. I feel like you're closer than what you are, but exactly now that you're trying to get rid of your quarterback, seems that you're taking a step back. I would be fascinated to see what this team looks like if they got just a different quarterback. And Nick Wright, I'll give him credit for this because he was the one who kind of started this idea. And it's never really caught on, and I think it's because there's too much of a risk factor in it. But the idea of treating quarterbacks kind of like the way we treated running backs, right? You have a quarterback. If you have a good offensive line, you have good skill sets around him, and you have him on your team, you draft him for 4 years. But you just sit there and realize, like, this guy's probably a top 15, top 10 quarterback with the stuff around him. But we really don't want to pay him the money that's going to cost him. All right, let's draft another guy, put him in our system for a year, let the first guy walk, and then we'll just reset the process, right? I think that's you would have to have a lot of cachet to do that, to just let multiple quarterbacks walk and basically be like, no, we're good. We're just going to keep doing this all over again. Because even if you have average quarterback play, the difference between average quarterback play and bad quarterback play is a country mile. We've seen what happened with Washington. They had Kirk Cousins for years. He is the definition of mid. But you saw how bad the team was when he wasn't on the roster. Same thing with someone like Tua. Tua this year, when they played, was really good, right? But when they didn't play, they couldn't move the ball. And it just shows you that the fact that, like, there is such a baseline for good quarterback play that once you don't have it, you fall off a cliff. And your team is so bad once you don't have that production. So for the Rams, as much as I like their roster, I think their general manager is really smart. You're going to be out there with you're a man without a country, and having the team basically be in this kind of limbo state where you'll definitely have the worst quarterback. We'll see what they do, whether or not they trade for someone. Wouldn't it be fitting if they got Aaron Rodgers on the team and this whole thing kind of resets around Rodgers? But yeah, it's already starting for the interesting time with the NFL of how this is going to play out. And I think a lot of it comes down to the fact that, like I said before, the quarterbacks just don't seem to be that good in this draft or that compelling. And now the number one pick in the projected draft apparently has a stress fracture in his foot and may or may not still go number one, which is a crazy thought. I'm going to now shift gears over a little bit to what's happening with the Eagles and how they will be celebrated. So as I'm recording this now, after I just read, it appears that the Eagles will have an invitation to visit the White House per Donald Trump himself. There was a report earlier that said that the Eagles were not going to go to the White House, but that seemed to not be true. And then the Eagles came out, or there was reports from the Eagles saying that they would actually go to the White House. And then it came out and said later that Trump will accept them. So I think a lot of this confusion came from the fact that back in 2017, when the Eagles won their first Super Bowl ever, Trump declined their invitation. Now, I think what's happening is unfortunately, ever since Trump has been the president of the United States, this has been a topic every single time he's been in office. So this time around, I think it's been looked at as an assumption that teams will treat him the same way that they did in the first time. But I think a lot of things have obviously changed in between his two presidencies. One is the guys in that locker room were anywhere between 20 and 12 the first time Trump was in office. You know, like, we're essentially talking about the generation of Trump, right? And so his presence, I think, isn't as off-putting to some people as it is to others, right? His acceptance of who he is. And as you see, clearly that the level of vitriol that he brings of just being associated with him clearly isn't as monumental as it has been in the past, or it doesn't appear so. And so now I think when you see with how things have changed, how the perception of him has clearly changed and been more accepting, it is it is a point of order to know that these Eagles are not the Eagles from beforehand, right? And the other most important thing of the climate too was it was right off of Trump saying get those SOBs off the field, and having these very weird conversations on morning sports shows for NFL games where guys were kneeling all around and things of that nature. Never forget Jerry Jones just looking for the camera, just kneeling before the anthem. That was strange. But yeah, it is a source of conflict now that every single team has to deal with. And I think it's going to speak in large part to the players who want to do it, right? I think that having it be left up to the players, which was what happened the first time with the Eagles when they won the first championship, I think is going to be the same thing that's going to happen going forward. And unfortunately or fortunately, it will just become a political football essentially each time, right? Which team decides to go, which team decides not to go, and how it will be. And full disclosure, my honesty, right? I do think that this could and should have been apolitical, right? In the sense that going to the White House is just something cool. Like, just straight up. Like, I don't know how many people in their lifetime will ever actually be able to go to the White House, right? Like, it is a place that most people have probably seen the outside of, especially people who live in the Northeast. It's a place to visit. Obviously, you've seen the Capitals and places like that. But actually go inside and look around and see it and see where everything's done is just a kind of a cool thing to do, despite whoever the president was. But it became such of a chicken or the egg thing of like, who's going, who's not going. And I think what ended up happening in this particular case was the fact that it became public pretty early that the Eagles would go. And once the Eagles said they would go, I think that it became a point for the Trump team to say, okay, we will extend the invite. And again, this isn't going to be for every single team. God forbid, but let's say the Lakers win the championship this year. There's no way in hell that at least LeBron's not going. I don't know if the Lakers as a team will go, but LeBron's not going. Same thing with the Warriors. The Warriors wouldn't go. And things of that nature. It's just, it is been now such a point where people will extract everything that they can from these things. And it was part of the reason why I personally think that people are rooting against the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. That doesn't mean there aren't people who are hella MAGA on the Eagles, right? It just came down to the fact that people don't like that shit in their face. And that's really where it came out, and that's really what it comes down to. But it is more the concept of how this thing gets done versus the actual substance of these people actually going or what their political beliefs are. Because I can't tell you any of the Eagles' political beliefs. I don't know. We do not know these people. And them going or them not, I don't think is any admission of acceptance into this. I think it's just an overall admission in America that this guy is here and he's not going anywhere for a while. And that's kind of just the way things are at the moment, as shitty as that might sound. All right, quick episode for you guys. That was all I had. Some 2 quick little burgers for y'all. Like I said, thank you guys again for listening. Like again, please subscribe, review, hit up a friend, tell a friend, tell a friend, tell a friend. And like I said, I'll see you guys again next week. All right, take care.